Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we're going to have a look at the latest on the stratosphere, as we have seen some very interesting data that came out yesterday from the ECMWF substantially increasing the chance of a sudden stratospheric warming. Now, over the past few weeks we have been looking at the stratosphere and definitely been suggesting there was going to be a warming taking place in January. But we've been sort of deciphering whether it's just going to be a sort of moderate warming, slight decrease in the stratospheric winds, or was it going to be a major warming, or even a sudden stratospheric warming, where we see a complete reversal in those zonal winds. Now, most of the models of the last couple of weeks, including the ECMWF, data has suggested a definite weakening, but very few have gone the full way to the sudden stratospheric warming. But today, not only do we have the GFS data, which has been very consistent on a major warming taking place for at least a week now, but we also have an update from the ECMWF. It updates its charts twice a week. We've got Thursday's data today, and most of the Ensemble members have a huge decrease in those zonal mean winds, well below average, with a significant chunk of them now, perhaps a quarter to a third, at some point in the last week of January into the first week of February, have a sudden stratospheric warming where the zonal mean winds drop into the easterly region, where they go negative, away from the zonal westerly direction. So again, only signs at this stage, but there's been a substantial shift in the model data that does hugely increase the chance now that we see something major taking place. Whether it will just be a warming in the stratosphere, a big decrease in the zonal winds, or whether it will be a sudden stratospheric warming, we will have to see. But we will look at the latest data. We'll have a look at what that is showing today. And of course, if we do see a sudden stratospheric warming, what type of sudden stratospheric warming will it be? Could it be a displacement event, or could it even be a split, with a split giving more chance of colder weather widely, whereas a displacement does produce colder weather, but not as widespread. So we'll have to see. We'll also run through sort of the daily charts. We'll have a look at the live radar. We'll have a look at the weather warnings. We do have rain warnings issued in the west. We'll have a look at the UKV, look at the precipitation and the temperature. It's raining very unsettled. And of course, look at the GFS, GM, ECMWF, and the ensembles for the next couple of weeks. To see what's going to be happening, as it does remain fairly unsettled, but we are seeing signs of some ridging in the Atlantic, which could turn us perhaps a little bit colder than average towards the sort of the middle of the month, and that's something we have been alluding to as well over the past few days. So do remember, if you enjoy my videos, make sure you like and subscribe, and remember to follow me on Twitter as well. The link's in the description. Now, if you start on the GFS data for the stratosphere, you can see a very strong stratosphere at the moment, up at 10 HPA, very cold air, and a minor warning taking place towards Siberia, but nothing too huge at all. As we run through these charts, that warming over Siberia starts to strengthen next week, and it starts to put strain on the stratosphere, and you can see those purples decrease, and they go more toward dark blues and a bit of pinks. So already the stratospheric temperatures are starting to increase quite slowly. Now, the North Pole here, of course, is just to north of Greenland and Svalbard, so you can already see a bit of a displacement of the sort of core polar vortex here, but not enough really to do anything to the weather. However, watch what happens right towards the end of the run. You could see really weakening in this blue area, and it's getting all elongated, showing the stress going on the polar vortex. And right under 384 hours, you can see how it is displaced. The actual North Pole is now in the greens, which is sort of minus 50 to minus 60 degrees, which is a good 10 to maybe 20 degrees above average for this time of year, and you can already see that there's a major warming taking place that is heading towards the Arctic, and the polar vortex is already being displaced. How it does develop beyond that, we will have to see, but the GFS definitely today, again, suggesting a major warming taking place in the stratosphere. It's been very consistent with this, and once again today, it is producing that pattern. Now, if you go over to that all-important ECMWF data, now you can see there is quite a big temperature anomaly. And now these are weekly anomalies. We have to remember that. So these are for a week long, and these are not the actual temperatures, but compared to normal. So we'll show a sudden stratospheric warming even better, as the blues show substantially below average temperatures, and the reds show substantially above. So if we were to see a sudden stratospheric warming, you'd expect to see dark reds right over that North Pole area, just to the north of Svalbard and Greenland. Now, if we do run through this data, you can see there is a warming taking place in the northern hemisphere, in the stratosphere, but it's not over the North Pole, not really penetrating the polar vortex at all. We do see a bit of a weakening, got a major weakening there from the 23rd to the 30th, and now this week is just out of that GFS time frame, so indicating that warming that the GFS is seeing over Siberia does travel into the Arctic, and you can see for the first week of February, slash sort of the last week of January, those dark reds are straight over the North Pole, indicating a major warming in the stratosphere, and the polar vortex is nowhere to be seen, obliterated on this ECMWF run, and it continues all the way to the run, all the way to the end of the run before we can see signs of the warming decreasing in strength through the middle of February, and perhaps some blues starting to appear, indicating the stratosphere will sort of reorganise itself a little bit. But a substantial warming here, indicating the real potential of a sudden stratospheric warming through the last week of January and the first week of February. Now, if you look at the all-important line charts, now this is the data from Monday, which you can see here, showing very substantially above average zonal mean winds all the way to the 23rd. Then we see a decrease towards average, maybe below average, but still a huge spread. And you can see maybe 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 going for a sudden stratospheric warming, but compared to the majority, not too many at all. But, as I said, there's a lot of spread there, and quite a few are going for quite a big weakening, and that's why we've been hinting at it, but not have any sort of concrete data on it. Now, if we do look to the latest run, look at that drop in the data. By around the 23rd, 25th of January, most ensemble members go below the average, which is around 30 to 35 metres per second. And most, around the first day of February, are around 10 metres per second, a good 20 metres per second below average. Now, if you do look the zero line, you can see perhaps, as I said, a third, maybe a quarter to a third there, are below the zeroing line, and some down to sort of minus 25. That is complete reversal in the zonal mean winds, an obliteration of the stratospheric polar vortex. And if we did see anything like that, then we need to prepare ourselves potentially for some real big blocking into the end of winter. Again, there is a lot of spread, but the shift is really apparent here. A huge shift between these runs, only 3 days apart. But the ECMWF definitely catching on to what the GFS has been alluding to with this substantial warming, and getting it really into the Arctic region, and yeah, making a big hit to the polar vortex. Again, we want to see that mean drop below zero in the next couple of runs if we want to sort of really concrete up on a sudden stratospheric warming. But here, a major warming is now likely from this data. A sudden stratospheric warming chances has increased substantially from maybe a week or two ago, maybe being sort of 5 to 10% chance, now maybe 20 or 30% chance, in my opinion, and that would just increase if we did see this data become more concrete, and in the consecutive runs next week, whether we do see this continue and that mean line reduce, and these milder or stronger runs dissipate a little bit, then we've increased those chances. But I do think there's about a 70, 80, 90% chance now we see a major warming that could impact our weather, a bit of a displacement in the polar vortex, and about 20, 30% chance we see a major warming or sudden stratospheric warming, which could really increase the chances of colder weather towards the surface. Now again, this has got quite a long time ahead before this really impacts us. Maybe we're looking at the first couple of weeks of February. If this came off in the last week of January, maybe around the 10th, 20th of February. Again, reminiscence perhaps of the beast from the east from 2018, where we saw a sudden stratospheric warming right at the start of February, giving us bitterly cold weather at the end of February. Again, we'll have to see sort of the lead time between event and blocking at the surface can sometimes be sort of a week, or it can be 2-3 weeks. So we'll have to see what happens, but this really does increase the chances of perhaps seeing blocking and maybe properly cold conditions, regardless of what other general weather patterns as we head into February. So we'll really have to see what it does develop how it does develop over the next couple of weeks. Now, if we do go back to what we normally have a look at on the daily basis, if we do have a look at the live radar, we just refresh it briefly. Now, recording this around 3 p.m, and you can see generally today it is a dry day. We saw school line move through overnight, and that gave some very heavy rain in the early hours, and that's now cleared well to our east. But most areas are dry today, with some blustery showers around, especially in the north and the south and the west. However, we've got another weather front arriving for Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland that will be sweeping northwards and eastwards, and it will be giving more heavy rain quite widely for pretty much the whole country over the course of the next couple of days. Another few rainy days coming, and it does look likely it will turn colder as we head into next week, with more of a northwesterly tilt to the jet stream and the low pressure systems, meaning cooler air or more average sort of air is in control instead of the very mild air we have had quite a lot this week. And if we put on the temperatures, we are in a bit of a colder sector right now, and it's not actually that cold really, it's just slightly cooler than it was yesterday. And you can see yellows are still around, but not quite as substantial as they were yesterday, and some more blues further northwards, but it still is generally average to above average in most areas. But next week I do think there will be more average, maybe below average, especially in the north, as we do see cooler air masses have a bit more control. Now, if you look at the weather warnings, we do have yellow warnings issued for parts of the southwest and South Wales from midnight tonight until 9 a.m. tomorrow. Heavy rain is expected to cause some travel disruption and flooding on Saturday morning. Again, that's that weather front that's coming into the Republic of Ireland now, making a big impact tomorrow. 20 to 30 millimetres over 6 to 9 hours, maybe 50 to 60 millimetres over higher ground. High likelihood, lower end of the impact matrix. Again, falling as a really saturated ground, that sort of individual rainfall shouldn't cause too many issues, but as I said, on saturated ground, it could cause some issues, and I do think we'll see more issues elsewhere as well over the coming week, as we do still see substantial rainfall, and we have very saturated ground and rivers starting to really swell up as well. So we'll have to see what happens with the rainfall over the course of the next week or two. If we do see this barrage of low pressure continue, which the models are suggesting, we could have more of these yellow warnings and maybe even amber warnings issued, and of course the environmental agency warnings issued for flooding as well, and those increasing over the course of the next couple of weeks. So we'll have to see how it does play out. Now, if you go over to the UKV and have a look at the precipitation and the temperature over the course of the next 5 days or so, you can see as we head through this afternoon, those showers increasing and the rain pushing in through this evening. And most areas around 9 p.m. to midnight will start to see rain falling. The far west of Ireland, it starts to stop, but most areas overnight will see heavy rain. And if you are up early tomorrow morning, around 8 to 10 p.m, 8 to 10 a.m, if you've got anything from 8 to 10 a.m, in sort of central England or pretty much all of England, there's quite a high risk you see precipitation, and through central areas could be some very heavy precipitation and school feature moving through there potentially. Through the afternoon, it doesn't really improve. Yes, the persistent precipitation does decrease, but we see these heavy blustery showers, maybe even thundery showers coming in from the west. As we head beyond that through Saturday evening, those showers continue. Some areas will be drier, but we continue to see showers push through into Sunday afternoon. And look at that, just more heavy showers. And again, rainfall totals could still tot up in these areas where those precipitation rates are very high. But luckily, it's not widespread. It's not a frontal system, so some areas will be spared as well. Some areas it might not be too bad at all, but I do think pretty much everywhere is going to have a shower risk through Saturday and Sunday. As we head into Monday, a bit of more heavy precipitation moves down from the north, and we could actually see some quite heavy snow there developing through Scotland and elsewhere. Just showery through Monday, but generally dry in central, southern and eastern areas. Into Tuesday, big weather front arrives from the southwest, and through the afternoon, heavy rain and leading edge snow for Scotland there, and we just stay extremely unsettled through Tuesday, pretty much a washout day there. And then as we head into Wednesday looks drier, but you can see all those showers starting to come in from the west. Now, if you look at the max temperatures, you'll be able to see this afternoon widely temperatures are sort of 8 to 10 degrees, so slightly above average for this time of year, maybe substantially above average in the far south, where it's 11 or 12. Overnight tonight, temperatures won't drop away too much, and they'll actually stay really quite mild, 10, 11, 12 degrees. And as we head through into tomorrow afternoon, look at those temperatures still 8 to 10 degrees widely, maybe 6 or 7 in the far north and west, where it's slightly colder with that air mass a bit more progressive there. As we head into Sunday, those temperatures once again are not too cold at all, but they're slightly colder than Friday and Saturday, with the temperatures maybe around the 6 to 8 degree mark, so average, maybe slightly above in the south and east, and generally just average further northwards and westwards, with it around 5 or 6 degrees. As we head into Monday, perhaps an overnight frost in a few areas, but generally cooler, and Monday afternoon, look at that, generally average conditions. Again, very cold compared to what we've had recently, where it's been 11 or 12 degrees. 5 or 6 is going to be comparatively pretty cold, but this is average for January, sort of 5 to 7 degree highs, and much colder across Scotland as well. So back more towards average on Monday. As I said, it is turning cooler next week. As we head into Tuesday as well, perhaps starting cold before a big milder sector moves through temporarily, before I guess colder air there, you can see through Monday does come back in from the northwest. So a brief milder sector there through Tuesday afternoon, so it could be actually quite mild there through Tuesday afternoon, but you could wake up on Tuesday, it'd be quite cold, and when you go to bed on Tuesday night into Wednesday, it could be quite cold as well. So a brief milder sector, but the general pattern is for it to turn slightly colder next week. If we do look at the longer range, we're going along and have a look at the GFS, GEM, ECMWF, and the ensembles. If we do run through the GFS today, again, you can see a westerly flow at the moment. It tilts more of a northwesterly though, or more of a flat westerly towards next week, and especially towards next weekend as well. You can see more low pressure coming out of Greenland and a bit of ridging towards northeast Canada, meaning those air masses are slightly colder. And right towards 384 hours, you can see we're actually in quite a cold pattern. It's a northwesterly wind, very unsettled, and pretty cold air does get enveloped around these low pressure systems, so it would be generally chilly for the UK, and there would be snow in areas, but it is in the longer range that I wouldn't put too much emphasis into it yet. As again, this is very much specific. Those sort of air masses coming in are only really because the low pressure systems are very strong and coming directly from Greenland. You alter that slightly, alter the intensity of the low pressure, alter the direction of it, and we'd see substantially different air masses, or at least slightly milder air masses involved with this. Again, no substantial blocking, but Atlantic ridging, which we have been alluding to quite a lot recently, and you're seeing that again. An example here where it remains very unsettled but does turn colder while keeping that very unsettled theme. Now, if you look at the GM, see how that does compare up until day 10. Again, a westerly flow at the moment, remaining fairly westerly, but more of a northwesterly tilt to the jet stream, and right towards 240 hours. You can see high pressure building up towards Europe, trying to push in cooler Atlantic fresh air in from Greenland and northeast Canada, but we're actually in a big milder sector ahead of the low pressure system. So this would be briefly milder before you can see a lot of cool air in the North Atlantic ready to spread in. If we do finish by look at the ECMWF run, again you can see very unsettled over the course of the next few days. Right towards the end of the run you can see a northwesterly pushing in and just staying very unsettled with just a barrage of low pressure all feeding in from northeast Canada and Greenland. So there will be colder air masses within this, but you can equally see big milder sectors are included as well. So yeah, could be some cold days, but could also be some mild days as well. If you finish by having a look at the ensemble members, the latest GFS ensembles, you can see generally we're around average over the course of the next couple of weeks. Brief spikes above and below, but generally it is cooler than it's been recently, but only really back towards the 1981-2010 mean. High precipitation values there indicating a lot of precipitation is going to be falling as well, so it's going to be really quite unsettled. And just a continuing of this westerly theme. If you look at the ECMWF ensemble members, again, for the midnight run, very similar to the GFS, generally average, a few brief bits above and below, sort of a zonal sine wave almost appearing here, and again, just showing you very unsettled westerly, slightly cooler than it's been recently, but again, not too many people notice too much of a difference, just there just won't be that as many of those sort of milder days where it's 11, 12 degrees, there'll be many more of those sort of 7 or 8 degree days, average conditions, where it is cooler, but nothing especially cold for this time of year. So we'll have to see what happens over the course of the next few weeks. Nothing too interesting, but definitely does look likely to turn a bit cooler and stay very unsettled. Of course, we've got to keep an eye on the stratosphere, as that could be a real big player as we head towards the end of January and the start of February, and can really spice things up into the second half of winter, and we could really see potentially some real cold returning, regardless of what's going to be happening in terms of our sort of other climate drivers. The stratosphere can really take over if we see a sudden stratospheric warming, and it can force everything into cold blocked weather patterns very quickly. So we'll have to see how it does develop. Again, no guarantees of it, but the risk has substantially increased today, or in the runs that we got yesterday. So we'll have to see exactly what happens. But make sure you stay tuned to the latest videos, of course, because we'll be covering it here. And we'll be having a look at how it does evolve over the course of the next few weeks. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. And I'll see you again for another video soon.